Hello students, hope you are fine with great health and happiness. Today we are going to study about historical research. This is our chapter number 3 of subject research methodology in education course code 8604 from Allama Iqbal Open University. You can download this whole book from their website, so you can understand my topic easily. So let's begin with this of our chapter number 3, historical research. Number 1 is objectives. It is expected that on the completion of the unit you will be able to: number 1, describe the concepts of history and historical research. Number 2, apply scientific methods in historical research. Number 3, distinguish primary source from secondary source of data. Number 4, distinguish internal criticism from external criticism in the process of data analysis, and conduct historical researchers in the area of educational planning and management. Number 1, introduction. The scientific method of the primary solution, sonic common characteristics of research, major steps in carried out in the research, and the format commonly used for writing research reports has been discussed in the previous unit. The discussion on the historical research has been divided into the following sub-units. Number 1, what is history? Number 2, scope of historical research. Number 3, formulation of problems in historical research. Number 4, historical sources, primary and secondary. Number 5, criticism with external and internal. Number 6, examples of criticism in historical research. And number 7, examples of historical research. So basically, what is history? History is a meaningful record of man's achievement. It is not merely a list of chronological events, but truthful, integrated according to the relation that between persons, events, times, and place. Man use history to understand the past and try to understand towards an individual, an ideas, a movement, or a institution. However, these histories and investigation without a consideration of interactions with the ideas towards which historians directs his actions. A writer does not become history merely through the process of prevention materials or records in museum like fashion. Number 2, we are going to know about, students, is history a science? Whether history is a science or not, it is an issue. Those who do not think history is a science gave the following argument. Although the purpose of the science is predicted, the historians can always generate on the basis of the past event, because of the past means unplanned, because there we are not many uncontrolled factors in the past events, and because a few persons or individuals were so crucial and important in the past events, hence the same pattern can be repeated. The historians must be depend upon the observations of those are that our observations are not as reliable as a self objective. The historians cannot control the conditions and variables as does a natural scientist in his science laboratory. There are advocates of history because a science gave the following arguments. The historians have a problem of formulating the hypothesis, collection and analyzing primary data tests the hypothesis as consists or inconsistent with the events, and formulating the generation and conclusions. In order to reach the conclusion, the historians use the same scientific method as applied by scientists, defined by problems, development and hypothesis. So now we're going to study about scope of historical research. Historical embraces entire field of human past, and it is broad of life itself. Our human past include many areas of social experience and activities that frequency has provided most significant that political history or military camping, for example, culture, ideas, laws, religious, literature, art, travel, engineering, industry, technology, society, etc. There is general argument among modern historians concern the richness, development and a broad view of past events extending far beyond the study of political, diplomatic constitutes and war materials. When undertaking the historical study, and scholar engaging in some of the activities that are commonly to all the individuals, but a nature of his subjects matters present him with the some problem that requires him to apply some special standards and techniques. So now we are going to learn about formulation of the problems for the historical research. The selection of the development of the problem for the study is the first step in the historical research. The beginning in this respect choose the broad step, the experimental historical realization that the historical research must be confined in a penetrating analysis of the limited problems rather than involving only in the superficial examination of a broad area. The weapons of the research in the is not a shotgun. Students, now we're going to study about historical sources. A large number of historical sources are used in the research. These sources have been classified in a number of ways. Some of the classifications are given below. Classification number 1. Classification number 1 of a source is appropriate for the history as well as the other sources of field is as follows. Physical remain historical sets, roads, pyramids, formulation building in future. Number 2. Human remains, cloth, food, poetry, implementation, weapons, machinery, industrial fine arts and of many kinds. Handwritten materials, some in the print include vellums and parchment. The documents of biographics and diaries. Personal observation by writing or by people he interviewed. Number 2, classification number 2. Another classification of historical research is comparatively simple and documented and remain a record keep are written by a actual participant in a or a witness of an event. These sources are produced for purpose of transmitting information to the use in future. Documentation, chairman of a particular curriculum committee, remaining different term, remain way to reveal the truth of the inaccuracy of documentation source. Then we have documents. In documents we have legislative acts such as consultation laws. Then we have court decisions, executive and other records. Newspapers, personal materials, remainings. Then we have classification number 3. In this, the primary source of collection the data are original document and remain the first witness of the event, where the mind of the observation on the eyewitness comes between the original events or the use of the source. There are eyewitnesses, the reports and the actual observation and particular are events. Secondary source are according to the events that were not witnessed by the reporter. He may have actual observation read by or by according the writer by observer, but the actual participants or the observation, the writing of say secondary source will was not on the sense of the event, but surely reported what the person who was there said or wrote. But 3, we have examples to distinguish primary and secondary sources. The following are the few examples illustrated the primary secondary sources collecting the data. Number 1, the secondary minimum of the meeting are primary, but the newspaper editorial comments on the meeting even through the basis of minutes of the meeting is secondary, since both the secretary and the editor has come between the events and the person the read the newspaper comments if the editor is the event, and the person who reads the newspaper comment if the editor is present in the person in the meeting of the school broad, then the comments are primary. The number 2, the official register card for studying in a school are a primary source for a analytical age, sex and geographical distribution, but the newspaper reporter based on the analysis is a secondary source. Students, now we are going to study about primary source of data. It needs, number 1, documents are reported for the key and participants or witnesses of an event. Those sources are providing the for the purpose of transmitting information to the use of food, and primary source are chapters, laws, source and records, and number B, remaining order relay are associated with the person, groups or person, tools, weapons of life of the people, these foods, clothes, tools, weapons, etc., religious beliefs, meaning of the. Number 3, oral testimony is the spoken according to the witness or the participant in a event. The events is obtained in an interview or may be related or described by as a witness related his experience. Students, now we are going to study about primary source of educational data for historical research. Including in the category are recorded and reports are legitimately bodies are depends on the educational public institution, headmaster, primary and data depending upon the educational committee, minimum of the school regarding board and recording and the work and record. Some of the main material reports on the education in the Pakistan are under number 1, report of the committee national education, number 2, curriculum committee reports, number 3, report of the committee and students and welfare. Then we have oral. Then we are going to study about secondary source of data. Secondary source of data are the reports of a person who relate the occurrence of eyewitness or an participant in an event. Secondary source of the data are usually limited worth for the research purpose because of the error that may be resulted when the information is passed on the person to person. Students, now we are going to study about historical criticism. The historical criticism does not often use the first hand knowledge based on the own observation. It is important for the historians to repeat the past occurrence as it come done in the case of the experiments in natural sense, where the occurrence of the reporter repeated at as well. The criticism of two types, external and internal. Students, now we first need to see about external criticism. Authenticity. External criticism deals with the genuineness of the documentation, where the documentation is well seem be read true of the origin. This criticism establishes the authenticity of the data and tries to establish whether the documents are real or not through the external criticism and historical checks on the authority or the source material where it is taken, which is the appearance or the claim to be, to determine whether the administration is evident or not. So and now we going to study about internal criticism, which is credibility. Internal criticism deals with the meaning and truthfulness of statement remaining within the document. In the other words, it is the weightage of the documents is related to the truth. After the authenticity, external criticism of an historical document or being established, there is a still problem evaluating in an accuracy or worth. Students, now we going to understand the principles of internal criticism. The following are few internal criticism points that will benefits. Number one, do not read into earlier documents the conceptions of later time. Identify errors, provide a dependency of sources of each other or common source. A witness credible each other on a certain point, on the other way maybe the truth of the both may be in error. Official testimony, oral or written, must be compared with unofficial testimony wherever possible, for the neither or nor the other is alone suffering. A documentation may be provide competent and depending events on a certain points, yet carry no worth or weightage in respect to the others in it mentions. Students, now we are going to study about examples of historical criticism. Following are few examples of historical criticism which are of creative gent, and the second one is fake art piece. Number 3 is Laclon letter. Number 5 is the diary of James Glentic. So these are in your book, is it mentioned? Study about it. Then now we're going to study about the historical hypothesis. Historical hypothesis. In this, the hypothesis in history. The historical also formulate the hypothesis like the physical scientist, but the type of the historical and a procedure for the testing a difference in the two fields because of the difference in the nature of the subject matter. The historical deals with the such as a complexity of phenomena that dealt with the physical scientists who are experienced and greater associated with the post event may be unmeasurable or unrecorded. Historical phenomena may be greater number of agents or are more complicated pattern of interactions among them that are physically phenomenon. A historical has a multiple hypotheses that can be drawn to take the conclusions that are conclusive and deductive as the physical science. Students, now we are going to study about hypothesis in a research in educational history. Although hypotheses are not always explicit stated in a historical investigation, there are usually implicated in hypotheses may be formulated in history, investigation and education. Several examples are listed below. Number 1, the education innovation in the 1950s and 1960s were based upon practice that eventually has been tried and discredited. Christian countries whose education system are required religious instructions have had lower churches attended rate than those countries in which the religious instructions may not provide in the school. The observation on the European school system and the American education system during the 19th century has been important in the effective upon the American education pattern. Students, now we're going to study about the historical report. The finding of historical research also formally described in this unit, showing the broad followed. However, it is a view of the special nature of the historical research. The report makes a certain demand on the investigator. The report include a statement of the problem and the review of the literature, the basic assumption underlying the hypothesis, the methods employed in testing the hypothesis, the result obtained, the conclusion, research, and bibliography. This requires creativity as well as an imagination and resourcefulness. The resource report should be written a system style that is dignified as well as objective. As we come to the concluding remarks of this chapter, in this unit you have studied about the historical research, the source for the data collection, and about the authenticity and credibility or the research data. This unit will help you in design the historical research wherever that is coming in upcoming unit will deals with the descriptive and explanatory designing. So thank you students for watching this. Hope you understand about this chapter of historical research. Hope we meet in next unit. So thank you very much for watching this.